Hands down, this is my new favorite manga. So, to say that Japan has a rough time with positive queer representation is an understatement. That's not to say that Japanese media doesn't have queer characters, but rather that they have a history of being portrayed negatively, harmfully, or as a taboo concept to fawn over the imaginary idea of. Which was why, while I was browsing manga for sale at Anime Boston earlier this year, one particular title jumped out at me. Love Me for Who I Am, or Fukaboku, is a series about a non-binary main character who gets a job working at a maid cafe. The catch, though, is that everyone who works at said cafe is a cross-dressing boy. At least that's how it's initially pitched. The cover looked cute, I'm a sucker for rom-coms, and I'm not exactly a stranger to some of the subject material in the story, so I decided to grab it and give it a go. And within very few pages, I realized I was in for a much more thoughtful and meaningful story than I anticipated. Love Me for Who I Am, written by A. Tozaki, is a 5-volume manga series which, in that short run, manages to tackle a myriad of issues regarding queer matters and portray them thoughtfully and with incredibly grounded characters and situations. I honestly have no idea where I want to start, so I guess we'll just jump into talking about all the characters individually and see where it goes from there. Our main character is Mogumo Ryunosuke. Assigned male at birth, Mogumo has never really identified as being a boy, and their preference towards more traditionally feminine clothing leads people around them to one of two conclusions. Either they're a girl, or they're a boy who's weird. And it's not helped by the fact that they live alone due to their father's anger over their lack of traditional masculinity, their mother's subsequent depression, and their sister's blame for ruining their family life. We follow Mogumo as they meet their classmate, Tetsu, who convinces them to get a job at his sister's cafe. Cafe question.
A little on the nose, don't you think?
A cafe for otokonoko, boys who dress like girls. This leads us to the first bit of conflict in the series, where Mogumo feels like they don't belong here either, as since they don't identify as a boy, they then logically can't be a cross-dressing boy. Tetsu, on the other hand, starts out seeming just like your run-of-the-mill high school boy. Although he, to his own admission, screwed up by assuming Mogumo's gender and situation, he vows that he and everyone else working at the cafe, even if they don't understand how Mogumo feels, they can at least learn to. Through working Mogumo through their own insecurities and helping them achieve the friendships they always wanted, Tetsu starts to grapple with the ideas of sexual orientation. He begins panicking when he develops feelings for Mogumo, unable to figure out if that makes him homosexual, since Mogumo doesn't identify with either gender, until eventually landing on the beautiful payoff of gender doesn't matter as long as you love them. We get rapid-fire introduced to the other members of Cafe Question, and quickly see all the various angles and aspects that are going to get tackled along with the core story following Mogumo. Mei has the first bit of tension with Mogumo joining the crew, as the cafe has a tradition of greeting guests by informing them that their servers are actually boys dressed as girls and asking if that's okay, though trying to play it up in like a cute way. Mei has latched onto this and finds comfort in it, as it feels like, to them, it allows them to be who they want. With Mogumo not wanting to say it, Mei takes offense and feels like it's taking away a piece of their own identity. Through this conflict, though, the real issue gets brought forth, and Mei's life takes a positive turn as she learns that she's in fact a girl. And while it might be a little schmaltzy, it also gives us a kind of cute payoff when the customers ask why they aren't still doing their normal introduction. Suzu has what is, in my opinion, a rather, we'll call it interesting situation. And for context, you have to remember that in Japan, same-sex marriage is still banned. And even this year, you still have the Prime Minister doubling down and insisting that the ban isn't discriminatory. Hey, so I'm actually going to interrupt myself on a much worse microphone. Literally, as I am sitting here putting the last touches on this video, we actually just found out that The Japanese court just ruled against that same ban that I literally just talked about. So that's pretty cool. If I remember to, I'll leave a link to an article talking about that in the description. All right, back to you, me. Suzu is a boy and has a boyfriend. They started dressing as a girl both as a way to appeal to him, and also because while he's dressed feminine, it allows the two of them to be a bit more public with their love, not feeling the need to hide it like they do at school. He fears how people will react, and also feels bad at the idea of telling some people, and then burdening them with having to keep it a secret. Honestly, if there was anything I would have liked to see this manga do with another volume, it would have been to further Suzu's story and maybe see some sort of happier outcome for their relationship. As it is, the two of them are happy together, and the unfortunate truth is that some people are in situations where that more defensive way of thinking is sadly valid. And without knowing the situations involving their families and friends, it's hard to say that I just want them to get over it and stop hiding their love, which is why I would love additional material to get to explore them more. And then there's Tenchan. He's just happy to be here. Tenchan is a boy who simply likes to cosplay, dress cute, and make cute clothes for himself and his friends to wear, and still identifies as a boy, which is totally valid. And he doesn't really go on any sort of journey, rather he just kinda gets to be our special little ball of good boy energy. For the first 3 volumes, the manga runs with these characters and problems as they all utilize each other's experiences as moments of learning about others and developing themselves, all while giving us doses of that sweet, blissful rom-com cuteness, as Mogumo and Tetsu just act as some of the most preciously awkward love interests I've seen since Ore Monogatari. And they honestly may also have my favorite love confession, with just how aggressively awkwardly they confess at each other, treating it like a battle to be won. I do also want to get into the 2 big conflicts that run through the story, and just how beautifully they're handled. So, at this point, even though I feel that knowing the plot beats won't super hurt the enjoyment of reading, I will officially declare a spoiler warning, and say to jump to the indicated time if you are worried about that. We good? Sick. The first major problem arises with Mogumo's childhood friend, Katone. The first time she met Mogumo, she was hostile, thinking that they were a boy and having a strong distaste for men. She only liked things that were cute, sweet, frilly, and assumed it was natural for people to dislike boys and boyish things. After being told, incorrectly, by Mogumo's sister that they were actually a girl, quote, "Ryu-chan has a pee-pee, but is still my sister. The world would be so much simpler if we just let children explain things." She opened up and accepted them. Fast forward to the present, and Katone begins getting hostile when Tetsu and Mogumo begin to develop feelings for each other. Katone lashes out at Tetsu for luring Mogumo into homosexuality, and stating that would just make life harder for them. But what we come to learn is that Katone has, unknowingly even to herself, been a lesbian this whole time. But due to society's views and internalized ideas, she couldn't understand the concept of loving someone of the same gender. She clung to Mogumo as a surrogate girlfriend, since if Mogumo was biologically male, that meant she could marry them and still get the feminine presence that she wanted out of a partner. Katone's arc is centered around confronting her on the use of Mogumo as a placeholder girlfriend, having her confront the idea of her own sexuality, and opening her up to the realization that there are other people like her that exist, girls that love girls, and that she isn't broken for not having interest in men. The story does such an incredible job at introducing Katone as a hostile and frankly unlikable presence, but then takes time to carefully explain her background, her lines of thinking, how she got to where she is, and while we don't agree with what she was doing, we can understand her thought processes. And then it has her grow into a character that we can even root for. It was such an incredible first half to the story, adding some much needed conflict into the budding relationship between Mogumo and Tetsu. So most everything I've talked about thus far in the video has been the first 3 out of the 5 volumes of the manga. That's because the last 2 are basically entirely devoted to the crux of Mogumo's troubles, their home life. And I'm actually going to give a trigger warning right now, because for as cute as this series has been thus far, it gets rough and it gets dark. Volume 4 introduces Mogumo's sister, Sakura. We quickly learn why Mogumo is the exact opposite of excited to see her again. Sakura routinely tries to pressure and guilt Mogumo into coming home, and resents them for, in her eyes, being the reason that their family is in disarray. Their dad works late in order to pay for Mogumo to live on their own, and is consistently bitter. Their mother has fallen into a state of hopeless depression, and so Sakura is left as the one who has to maintain the house, do chores, and try to keep the family afloat, which is a bit much to ask for someone who's still in school. On top of that, Sakura has also been getting pressure from her dad over her less traditionally feminine interests, and is essentially getting bullied out of living her life the way she wants, because he fears that Sakura is going to start claiming that she's actually a boy. And what's later revealed is that the true reason behind their mother's depression is that when in a fit of extreme gender dysphoria, Mogumo and Sakura's mother walked in to witness Mogumo about to attempt to slice out their own Adam's apple, driven to despair by the pushback they kept facing on their gender identity. In their mother's eyes, Mogumo was suicidal and while at knife point blamed her for even giving birth to them. And now she was trapped in a family where the father couldn't accept their children, he was pressuring her into trying to keep them in line, and she had no idea how to help anyone in any way that could make them all happy. And this moment with the knife is alluded to in Volume 4, where Sakura is about to attempt to take her own life in the same manner their sibling did in the past, still not understanding the context of the situation, but being at her own breaking point. And the resulting confrontation lands Mogumo in the hospital. Fun stuff! So, now with 2 cases of crippling depression, 1 attempt at bodily mutilation, and 1 attempt at unaliving oneself, the question becomes, how the hell do we end this on a perfectly wrapped up note? And what I love is that the answer is, we don't. Okay, so no, we mostly do, but I really and truly love how this series ends, and we will get there. While in the hospital, Mogumo lets all of their history out from their point of view to Tetsu and Sakura. Sakura was the easiest problem to address, as hers came from a situation of simply not knowing the full story and Mogumo's struggles. And since she has shared some similar issues with their father, it's easy for her to find mutual understanding. When the time comes for confronting their parents, things initially get off to an incredibly bad start, with things picking right back up where they started. As Mogumo holds their ground, we get a peek into their father's past, and we learn about generational trauma! He has a warped, traditional, and toxic view on masculinity and what it means to be a man, something that was drilled into him by his own father. But he views himself as strong now and thinks he owes it to his father's control, so he tries to force the same behavior onto Mogumo, genuinely thinking that what he's doing to them is going to help them in the long run. As they talk, Tetsu arrives to tag in and talk about his own experience with transgender people, his sister being a trans woman, as a lot of Mogumo's father's responses seem to stress that he quite simply refuses to believe that people like this are real. Everything comes to a head when finally their mother finds the courage to speak up against him and reveals that she has taken time to learn and talk to people to try and gain an understanding. She manages to convince him to stop and at least try to listen to their children and to try to learn. We fade away from that scene and get hit with an ending that I absolutely adore. We see Mogumo's family all come to the cafe to support them, their father still clearly seeming uncomfortable with everything, but coming to support them nonetheless. As we close in on the end, we see that their father is genuinely happy that Mogumo is doing well and is also happy for themselves. And as we move on to the final page, he informs them that he still has a lot of questions, to which Mogumo tells him that it's okay, you don't need to have all the answers, and that they don't even have all the answers themselves. And then that's where it ends. It doesn't end with Dad suddenly being like, "Oh, my dear child, how wrong I have been. I understand now, and I love you. Come here, I'm ever so sorry." It ends rather so much more simply and believably, with someone who is still learning about an idea that has been foreign to them for so long, but making an effort for the sake of those they love, and demonstrating that they recognize they still have work to do and are willing to keep working on it. If there's any part of the story that I feel lacked in any way, it would be at the very start, probably the first half of the first volume. Lacking the words to say what I want in a better way, it comes off a little preachy, I guess? I think necessarily so. It spends a long time just kind of repeatedly drilling into your head the various ideas, terminologies, and concepts that the story will be dealing with, really making sure you understand what a transgender person is, really making sure you understand the concept that same-gendered people can love each other, so on and so forth. It's definitely important to make sure that the reader is familiar with the concepts you'll be exploring, but I don't know. I don't feel like people that need that sort of lecture are the ones who are going to be picking up a book like this. But hey, if even one person out there learned something or felt validated by this, then hey, it's all worth it. Throughout the entirety of its run, Love Me for Who I Am tackles issues of gender identity, sexual orientation, the idea of passing as your preferred gender, gender dysphoria, gender roles, unconscious biases, generational trauma, and just so much more. All packed tightly into 5 volumes of cuteness. It handles each and every character's problems, views, and stories with a level of care and tact that I feel shows an incredible amount of respect and understanding to the problems members of the LGBTQA+ community face. Hell, one of my friends, a trans woman, read this manga after listening to me talk about it ad nauseum, and told me how much they connected and related to the characters and their issues. Even to a point where they said that they won't read volumes 4 and 5 on rereads because it actually hit too close to home. And it does all this while managing to maintain a cute and endearing art style that serves to make the lighthearted sections all the more fun and give the more serious moments their time to breathe. I am in love with Mogumo's Pikachu moments. I honestly cannot recommend this series enough. If you like cute crap, read it. If you like queer representation, read it. Or if you just want to read something refreshingly different, read it. Just read it. You can buy it in bookstores or read it online, and I'll even drop a link to a site where you can buy it digitally. It resonated with me, and if you're someone who has ever faced any struggles like the ones I've mentioned, I'm willing to bet it will with you too. And I really want to see this story get supported and to see more like it. A massive thank you to Artemis Robbins and all my patrons who have continued supporting me during my absence. Are there any other manga or anime that you feel have done a really strong job of positively representing the queer community? Let me know in the comments. Please, I want more. While you're down there, feel free to check out my Twitter or Patreon. I took a break for reasons that I discussed there, and while I'm unsure about resuming monthly uploads, I am going to be slowly trying to get back into releasing content regularly. Until next time, I'm CJ Pecor, the Angry Avocado, and even after this hiatus, I still don't have a sign-off.